How's it going, everyone? Raptor Scope here, and today we're going to go over helicopters. More specifically, my controls for the helicopters, and I'll give you a little bit of explanation on how you can tweak it to more personalize your own touch to it. I myself, again, I play controller only, so everything is going to be bound to a PS5 controller since I'm currently playing on a PS5. But you can use these on an Xbox. And if you choose to play with a controller on PC, you can use them as well. So let's go ahead and get right into it. So let's check this, and we'll see in our helicopters. Switch this all the way over. Um, for the control mode, you're going to have none, and virtual and auto trim off. Now, you can fly with the auto trim on. That's going to put you in realistic, and what that's going to do is this is going to trim your helicopter out for you instead of having to have binds set for your trim. But for this, we're going to set to full reel. I do have my collective pitch, again, square and triangle. Those two stay the same through my helicopters and also my aircraft. And for those, I keep value for disabled axis, relative control, and I keep my relative control right about 70% just so I can move it up and down a little bit faster in case I feel like I'm about to hit the ground because I'm coming in too deep, too fast. So I give it a little bit higher collective and it levels me out or brings me up. As we continue on, again, the same thing applies for our roll and pitch axis. This is going to be our left stick, and I keep those just at 1 and a light dead zone, just so that every little minor increment you can tell as I barely press on the stick and it's starting to travel. I also use stick extensions on my controller to give me that little bit of extra touch. And that's the same for the roll as well as the pitch. What that's going to do is just, again, make everything smoother and easier to control. And for the yaw, now the yaw is going to be a little different. Now, yaw is situational because, well, I don't know why I pressed, but it's all right. But yaw is situational. I lower the multiplier just to give it that little bit of extra touch, and I raise the nonlinearity just so that it's a little bit off. It's not giving me the full 100% that I would usually get, but that also gives me a little bit of extra smoothness in the light rudder touches. And we'll continue forth with the sensitivities. I keep mine very low for sensitivities because if you have it high and flying in full reel, you tend to have where your pitch is going to jump up and down or you're having difficulty with the roll. That just gives it to where you can give it nice little minor increments. For the weaponry, we're going to scroll down until we get to the primary secondary weapons. That's going to be X and O. And if I'm not mistaken, for Xbox, that would be using A and B. Um, we continue further in. Now, weapon lock is L1 and O, and that just makes it easier for L1 being a weapon modifier of sorts. With that, everything I have is going to be set to the weapons on my L1. I do have this currently set as that, but we're going to switch it up. And we're actually going to keep that as the weapons, as the switching weapons. And a lot of this is going to be bound in the future. Currently, right now, this is just going to be your basic setup. This is currently still in testing, just like the previous video I posted out about the aircraft controls. We'll continue forward though. Now, lock radar target on, I keep it L3, but that's just in the sense that if I have a radar on it, I can choose to lock and unlock a target. I also have L1 in my right stick as my horizontal Q. That way I'll be able to move my Q around in the radar. For this, I keep everything the same. I don't keep value for disabled axis, nor do I turn on relative control or adjust any of the other stuff for this. Because when I press L1 and I move the stick around, I'll have full functionality to be able to use the radar. The same goes for the radar IRST control axis with L1 and then square and triangle. That way I can raise the radar antenna. IRCM is going to be with R1, L1 triangle, and that's going to, again, of course, engage and disengage your IRCM. R3 is going to be your countermeasures, and the reason for that is just so you have that easy access of, oh no, someone's fired a missile at me. Let me dip down a little bit lower, pop off a few countermeasures, and watch as the missile flies over us. And that'll make things a lot easier. That way you don't have to remove your hands from your flight controls or your view. You can be looking at a target and tracking as the missile's coming by, and flare and watch as it goes by you. Um, I do have these set for circle, but I wouldn't necessarily need them because I already have circle set as my fire secondary weapons. These are just set as more fail safes to make sure that they're shot off. I do have the right stick as my missile control so that when I'm in the camera view for the tracking, I can keep simple track and be able to move the axis for it. And I don't adjust anything for this as well. I keep this the same just so that everything is all equal and in unity. Now, me personally, with playing and learning, I've noticed that I need to turn this down because it's a little bit too fast for my liking inside the camera. Continue on, our change rate of fire is going to be R1 options, and that's for whenever you have a vehicle that you do have the option to utilize it. R1 down is going to change your sight mode so that, for example, if you have rockets or if you're using AGMs, you can switch to your sights in the rockets to see where they're going to go off if you had a bind set that didn't separate them whenever you chose a secondary weapon. L1 options is going to be, of course, to toggle your options. And L1, R3, and L3 are going to be your sight stabilization and destabilization so that you're going to be able to lock onto a point with your camera. And then R1 triangle is going to be your cockpit. R1X, your virtual cockpit. And that's for whenever you're playing, like if you're playing helicopter PvE, you'll be able to utilize that. Or if you're playing ground realistic battles, you'll be able to use that as well. And your R1 circle is going to be your shooter ATGM. Your gunner view is going to be R1 square. And tracking a camera enemy, we're actually going to remove that for the moment because haven't had a need for that. But in the future, I'm pretty sure I will. For zoom axis, it's going to be the same as my aircraft with L1 and R2, L2 as my axis. That way, when I'm holding L1, I can zoom in and out without it using my rudder, without kicking in to the side, to the left or to the right, making it easier for me to be able to get smaller increments of zoom instead of having to go on full value or the zero value. My view and battle is going to be my right stick as well. And that is going to be keep value for disabled axis and keeping relative control on. That way we're able to move our head freely inside the cockpit and have no issues whatsoever with that. And reset value axis is going to be R1 up, and that's going to be the same for the X as well as the Y axis. The aiming axis is going to be on the right stick as well, so that I can be able to aim the camera when I'm tracking an enemy or tracking a target on the ground. I will hit my sight stabilization and then line it up for a air-to-ground missile. Keeping forward, I have R1 L1 up as my engine, but that's not extremely necessary for flying helicopters. So we're going to change that and do that for toggle extinguisher, just so that you get hit. You do have them, and some of them will automatically deploy, but let's say you want to deploy this manually. Well, now you have it at your fingertips to be able to extinguish the fire and keep in the fight. R1, L1, L3 is going to be to toggle the gear, and there's going to be some that it's going to be used on and some that do not have gears. For example, the Hinds have gears, so you're able to bring them up, retract them, and bring them in. But some only have your landing struts, so that's going to be dependent on the helicopter you're flying. I do not have any flaps because no need for that. I have an open cockpit set just in case I want to be able to actually hear anything that's outside. For example, if I'm flying in on simulator battles and I'm flying a little bit lower, but I want to be able to hear any of the engines from enemy vehicles or any vehicles around me. Well, now I can. I can open my cockpit, listen, and hear where stuff is around me. I do not have MFDs at the moment set, but again, later on in the future, I will have these all set up. As far as trim goes, it's very specifically on the left D-pad for a reason. To be able to have trim at your fingertips allows you to trim your aircraft out to have full control, where you will not need a auto trim. You won't need any assists from the game to help you fly the helicopter of your choice. Now, elevator is going to be increase value down and decrease value up to emulate a aircraft. So you would press down and it pulls the stick back. You press it forward and it presses it forward, giving you less trim. I'm sorry, let me go back into that. You're going to keep value for disabled axis as well as relative control, and we're going to turn this to about 20. Now you can play between 20 and 30, but personally I wouldn't go any higher than that because then you're going to be shooting past your targeted trim goal. And then you're having to play the game of going back and forth trying to figure out which one's going to be the right one for you. For the aileron trim, it's going to be right on the D-pad and left on the D-pad. And of course, the same thing follows as well from the elevator trim. Keep value for disabled axis and relative control on with 20% to 30% relative control sensitivity. And then for your rudder is going to be where you press R1 and hold left and right to be able to change your rudder trim, and then 20% relative control sensitivity. And this right here is all the helicopter controls that you'll need to be able to get into the fight, be able to get a target locked, and to be able to fire upon those. Now, for this, I want to go ahead and give a little bit of a demonstration to be able to see all of this being in action. So we'll go ahead and set that. We're going to set it for simulator. You can choose to use any other types, but we'll set this for simulator for the moment just so we can get the full feel for it. So first, right now we're able to bring our zoom in and out, holding L1 and using L2 and R2, as well as L2 and R2 being our rudders. We're able to look around and see everything that's on our sides. We have a button that brings us right back to center, but we'll go ahead and start off with the takeoff. Now I didn't start off with a trim. We're going to give it a little bit of power. And we're going to see it's going to start to rotate to the right. So what we're going to do is we're first wanting to counteract that. Counteract the rotation. So we've counteracted it. Now we're going to try to get into a bit of a hover. Had to set her down for the moment. You know what? We'll worry about the trim later. We'll trim her on the fly. This will teach you something as well. Trimming on the fly, being able to get these numbers quickly so that you're actually going to get into the battle quicker and easier. So we have, right now, we're completely in flight and able to give that little bit of trim. And as you can see, as we're getting deeper and deeper into this. Now that our helicopter is properly trimmed, you can see the distance. And the proof right here, we are in full reel, our virtual instructor's off, and auto trim's off. So we have no assists from the game whatsoever. So now, let's find some targets. Now, of course, we know that there's going to be targets right up here. Now, we see the targets up. We can zoom in. We're going to dethrottle a little bit and take shots, giving a little bit of rudder. And just like that, with zero issue whatsoever, you're able to see where your rockets or your guns are going to go. And even this, right now with this control setup, you're able to properly hover. You can gun if you want. And as you can see, I'm not losing any control from this. I'm able to maintain full control and have very, very limited issues whatsoever. And that's it. As long as it follows through and you're able to properly get shots on and keep up with the fight, that's the big key. Just like that. So I hope everybody enjoyed this video, and I hope at least somebody's going to be able to take something from this. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to contact me. I will answer as many questions as I can, but hope y'all have a great day.